Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of ESPN Cricinfo Power Play. It's a very exciting time because the Women's Premier League has already started in India. This is the last time it will be played in the February-March window. It's going to be moving to the January window from 2026. And of course, that's such a busy time of cricket all across the Southern Hemisphere, particularly. We have South Africa who've been impacted by that as the chances to start a women's SA20 are now kind of up in the air, which we'll talk about. And of course, Australia, who've got their international season happening at the same time. But for now, here we are. It's the big league time. It's the WPL that is kicked off. And I've got my colleague Valkerie Baynes with me. Valkerie, we've watched a couple of seasons of the WPL. What are your impressions of it thus far as a tournament? Still just the 5 teams? Do we want bigger, smaller, different time period? How have you been enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it started off with a bang, actually. I've been really enjoying the first couple of games that we've seen. And I think there has been talk about expanding it, and that could possibly work. I'd actually probably quite like to see that. It's clearly, a tournament that everyone wants to play in. It's now got, as you've mentioned, that dedicated window. So there won't be clashes in terms of internationals going forward. As you mentioned, potential clashes with other leagues, but they are being worked around. And this seems to be the place that everyone wants to play. So, I think expansion is a really interesting one, and one that certainly can be looked at going forward. And what we've seen so far, I mean, we know this already, but it's well and truly here to stay.
Yeah, exactly. And we're also seeing a little bit of a change in venue this time. We see the WPL expanding to Lucknow, some of it being played in the state of Gujarat. And I think we may end up in a situation where we've got home and away fixtures, for example, where you can really see the fan base building up. And we're just kind of getting the hang of, what it takes to make this tournament work. So at the time of recording, we've had 3 games so far, a couple of days before you'll be listening to this, and 3 successful chases. Very interesting for the women's game, where you're starting to see that teams are really learning how to pace the chase. I've just come through the SA20, and it's the lowest run rate we've had across 3 editions of the tournament. A very hot summer here in South Africa, dry, tired pitches. Suddenly scores like 160 looked like 210. And I think we're really getting the hang of this, what makes a challenging score in T20 cricket, especially as power hitting has become part of the game across both the men's and the women's. Someone I know who's really worked on her boundary hitting skills is the West Indies' Chinelle Henry, signed as a replacement player for the injured Alyssa Healy for the UP Warriorz. And we had a chance to chat to her here on the Power Play podcast. So let's have a listen to that interview.
Chinelle Henry, thank you so much for joining us on Power Play.
I'm glad you could have me. Thank you.
No worries. So I guess, first of all, WPL, you're making your debut after being called up to UP Warriorz as an injury replacement for Alyssa Healy. Tell us a little bit about the whole experience of your call-up initially and joining up with the squad.
To be honest, I wasn't expecting. I mean, obviously, I was in Jamaica because, I was just going through the paces, finishing my recovery, doing stuff like that, cheering on the girls in the Bangladesh series. And then the next thing I know is I'm getting calls, I'm getting emails that, they need me as an injury replacement for Healy. And then I was like, whoa, that's a big shoe to fill. So I'm just happy to be here, and I'm ready to give everything on the field.
So having joined up with the team, what have been the discussions regarding your role, and what are you hoping to achieve for the team?
We haven't really got into that discussion yet. Today is obviously the first training sessions with the team. So I guess today is just about understanding stuff, what's expected, obviously big conversations with the captain, with the coach, if and when I do play, what is expected of me, and going forward throughout this tournament.
Sure. And in terms of the WPL, can you just talk a little bit about, what kind of an opportunity this presents for yourself and, all the other players involved?
Obviously, this is a really huge opportunity for me. I've been played in the West Indies. My only other franchise league would have been the CPL, the Caribbean Premier League. So obviously to be a part of, one of the biggest franchise around in female cricket in the WPL is really big thing for my career going forward. And obviously I would like to make this, this is my debut year, and this is obviously something that I would look forward forward to doing well. Obviously, next year, maybe I could secure a place, to be actually a part of a team permanently, coming in the next edition of the WPL. So this year is definitely, kind of like a test run, a trial run for me. Obviously, the atmosphere playing along with, some of the best in the world from their respective region is going to be huge. Learning from some of the best players. Obviously, we have some great individuals in this team. So this will be, a lot of learning. A lot of learning this year, and hoping that I can actually go out there and deliver on the field when called upon. Because obviously, that's the reason why I'm here. Obviously, they saw something. Obviously, Healy. Unfortunately, we the team lost her to injury, and to be that replacement is a huge honor. So obviously, I'm looking forward to the challenge and playing with some of the best in the world.
I was going to ask you about that, because one of the things these franchise leagues really bring, and I guess, the WPL in particular, is, that star power and all the best in the world coming together and play together and against one another. How do you see that in terms of, an opportunity and developing your own experience, but also, for you to help others as well that are in your team?
Obviously, that's always been a discussion in our team, to branch out to play big franchise leagues. Obviously, we have the likes of, Haley Matthews, Deandra Latin, obviously Stephanie Taylor, who has also done it before. So, for me, to be another person out of the West Indies to actually play, in these franchises would be a lot. Especially, there's a lot I could take home, a lot I could discuss with a lot of the younger girls in the squad. Obviously, these players I've played, against them and never with them. So this is really a huge opportunity and a lot to learn. And if I can take, something or things from this competition going forward that will help my game, then that's something that I really want to do.
So in terms of UP Warriorz, I know you've only just sort of joined up with them, but talking about, team goals, obviously they finished third first season and fourth last year. What sort of are you hoping to do in terms of turning the team's fortunes around, I guess, and getting them sort of that little bit further up the table?
Obviously, I've watched, the last couple seasons and the performances of all the teams actually, and as I said, the captain played a huge role obviously in wherever the team finished in the last two seasons, and coming in as a replacement, obviously, like I said before, that's a huge set of responsibilities on me, a huge gap, huge shoes to fill. So obviously, they see me as that player that could help the team move forward, and that's what I'm here to do. And obviously, when given the opportunity, when given the chance, this is just about helping. This is just about the team, and if I can be that other overseas players along with the others that we've had, and also the local players, we could just come together and build that team, build that environment, that winning team along with the coaching staff. That is exactly something that I'm here on. That is something that I'm here to do. So today, as I said, our first session with the team. Last night we had a bit of bonding, so I got to know them a little bit better, and things that they're about, things that they enjoy, and things that they look forward to doing on the field. So it's a pretty good start here, and then today is just about going out there and enjoying their company and fitting into the team and see where I fit in, when the opportunity comes.
Speaking of your own form, you've got some pretty good form in India recently. It was only in December you scored a half century in the third ODI and a 16-ball 43 in the T20 there. So in terms of your form on Indian soil, what do you sort of put that down to? You seem to enjoy it out there.
The tour we had last year against the Indian team, that was my first time in India actually, and to actually come in and play somewhere that I've never played before the way that I did, I was really, really pleased. And obviously the team supported me, the coaching staff supported me, and I got a lot more freedom. I was able to play with a lot more enthusiasm, back myself, have more fun. So I think that's something that I try to put into my game, like enjoy it as much as I can, because when I do enjoy it, that's when I'm at my best, and that's something that I want to continue to do. a lot of people have been talking about it, that, I have been informed lately. And that's something that I actually want to continue to do, because obviously the pressure of the WPL is different from everything else. I mean, as I said, I was here and just playing in the series, the crowd, the atmosphere was amazing. So I can just only imagine what it's going to be like playing in the WPL. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm up for the challenge.
Fantastic. We'll just take a very quick pause there because Firdose is back, so she can jump in and join us and throw some questions to you.
Obviously we're very happy that you've got a WPL call up. We've watched you play for West Indies for such a long time. And I'm just wondering, after the T20 World Cup, I mean, you guys were phenomenal in knocking England out as an anyone but England supporter. This is always something that I enjoy. What was the kind of reaction and reflection after that? And I mean, I'm sure you would have been disappointed not to make it all the way to the final, but did that lead to any changes? Where do you see West Indies cricket now?
Obviously, the World Cup was, it was good for us. The things that we achieved. Obviously, you said England being one of the best in the world, we were able to overcome that hurdle. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it to the finals, but I mean, was definitely proud of the team, proud of the performances. Each game, somebody else, put their hand up. It was a collective effort, and I think looking back at that World Cup and how we performed as a team, we just, moving forward, that's how we want to play. That's the things we want to do when we come up against big teams. It's not about just showing up, but actually competing. So that's just the mentality we developed over the past couple of years going forward, because obviously there are big teams like Australia, the England, the India, obviously New Zealand being one of them. And when they mention West Indies, people is probably just like they don't know what to expect. So we're kind of building a culture, building a brand that, whoever it is, whenever we play, we're not just turning up. We're gonna go out there, we're gonna fight, we're gonna compete, and at the end of the day, whatever the result is, we're happy with that as a team, to know that we gave it our all, and we also allow the coaching staff allows us to play with freedom, to enjoy the game, something that obviously most of us enjoy doing, including myself. So that's something that we want to keep going forward. And obviously, as I said, being here in the WPL, not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous at first, but after coming back here, kind of adjusting to the atmosphere. Today we go out for our first session, well, I'm joining up with the team for my first session today, so it's just about getting to know the girls a little bit better, and just kind of picking up where I left off the last time I was in India. So it's just about continuing that confidence, continuing to play with that freedom, and to know that I have the backing of the coaches and the team, and it's just about going out there and executing.
Yeah, and Chinelle, this WPL is quite an interesting one, because it's being played just before the Women's World Cup, which takes place later this year. So I guess for a lot of players, it'll give you some idea of conditions and stadiums and crowds. But of course, West Indies have to qualify for the World Cup, and you've got that coming up in April. It's not a nice thing. I mean, we've spoken to Bangladesh's captain, Nigar Sultana Jyoti, who was just devastated, really, that they'd have to qualify again. It's quite a difficult thing, qualification. So how are you looking forward to that? Is it tough? Is it something that you're equally nervous about? And how do you feel about your chances?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because when you talk about West Indies, we always want to be at the big stage, the big competitions. We always want to be competing. And obviously, the same amount of confidence, the same amount of enthusiasm that we play the T20s with, that's something we're trying to, obviously go out there and play the longer version with. I mean, to go to a qualifiers is my second time going to a World Cup qualifiers with a team. And the last time we went to Zimbabwe, it was terrifying, because obviously it was around COVID time. And, to know that we have to do it again this year, I think that's something we talked about as a team moving forward. The longer version of the game is something that we're going to have to take more responsibility as a person, as a team, and know that to avoid these situations, this is what we have to do. So we've had discussions around that, and moving forward, we have plans and we have stuff in place that we want to do. But obviously, not having the West Indies at a World Cup would be a lot, and especially the fan base in the Caribbean, because they always expect us, you know, to always do good things, to always go to World Cups, to always do our best. So obviously that's at the back of our mind now, that obviously after this WPL we have to go to the qualifiers, and it's definitely a different version. So we're gonna have to, you know, the couple of us that's here playing in the WPL is gonna have to, you know, kind of adjust to competitions. We've played in Pakistan before, so it's not like it's going to be foreign territory or anything. So we have the confidence as a team. We've had discussion, and we know a job that we have to do come April.
And Chinelle, do you think that there'll be any big changes, whether it's personnel changes or just changes in mindset and tactics when you go into this? You know, you did well at the T20 World Cup, but I suppose something has to happen for you to be able to take that next step and potentially win a tournament.
Yeah, obviously the last time we won a World Cup, which was the T20 World Cup of 2016, and I think that's something that we keep talking about, and obviously that was a long time ago. So obviously there's something there's something more we want as a team. We've won the T20 World Cup once, and definitely the ODI World Cup obviously is something that we talked about, and we just don't want to keep dwelling on the past that, hey, we won a 2016 T20 World Cup. Teams are evolving, teams are getting better, players are getting better. So as a team, we know that we have to get better, and these are things that we have to do in order to, you know, be better at the longer version of the game. We're also talking about, just probably going off topic here, Test cricket, you know, coming back for us. And in order to do well in those areas, these are the little things that we have to do, starting from the ODI, obviously the longer versions of the game going forward. So these are things that we have to take into consideration. Tactics have to change, yes. Mindset have to change, and maybe there will be changes. We don't know, but as a player, you're always hoping that you're selected, and obviously, you know, the things that you have to do when you're selected, and mindset is definitely a part of it. And that's something that, you know, we have to want to change as a group, have to want to change as individuals if we're going to compete with the big teams in the longer version of the game.
Chinelle, as always, the cricket just comes thick and fast, and there's not really much let up. But between sort of the qualifiers and then the actual World Cup, hoping that you guys get there, you've got a tour of England, and you host South Africa also. I guess England in particular, I mean, it was you guys that ultimately knocked them out of the T20 World Cup. So how are you expecting them to respond when you're here on their home turf?
Obviously, it is definitely going to be a challenge, because I'm pretty sure they'll remember that, you know, we're the reason why they didn't make it further in the T20 World Cup. So obviously there will be a lot to settle there, but that happened, and we know what it takes to beat teams that are ranked above us. We know what it takes individually and as a team, and obviously there's a lot we could take from that World Cup and to bring into this series that we have coming up against them in May. And just remember the things that we did as a team, we did as individuals, that was able to take us over the line. And then it's just about backing ourselves, backing our skills, and just playing cricket and having fun. And once you do that, the results normally take care of themselves once you conduct yourself in the way that, you know, you should as a player on and off the field. And then obviously, like I said, they will be coming out guns blazing. So as a unit, we have to be up for the challenge, and we have to be ready to know that when they come, when the pressure happens, we just know how to deal with it and move forward.
Chinelle, you mentioned Test cricket there. I have a lot of feelings about women playing Test cricket, mostly negative, because I want them to play more red ball cricket. But fortunately or unfortunately, I covered the South Africa-England Test match in Bloemfontein, and I loved it, actually, despite the result and all of that. And I actually really enjoyed watching it. I know that I think West Indies will be coming to South Africa in 2026 or 7 to play a Test 26, yeah. So I'm really excited for that. And you mentioned Tests. Is this a format you've always wanted to play? And how do you feel about getting to play a Test match, but also about the preparation leading up to it?
Yeah, we as I said, obviously, that when a lot of us heard that, we are potentially, going back, we are going to play test cricket. We saw a lot of excitement, especially in the youngsters' face. The youngsters we have in the squad, that they're going to actually have an opportunity to play red ball cricket, because we don't play red ball cricket in the Caribbean. It's always white ball, because obviously we don't play tests, so we just play competitions. Is always white ball. Most of them has never played a red ball cricket. I probably have only played red ball cricket twice in my career. So obviously it's exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I mean, test cricket, I've watched it, both men and women, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but we're up for the challenge, and we're really excited. We have talked about, preparations, the things that we have to do. Obviously, fitness is going to be a key role in that. Preparation leading up to the 2026 schedule for test cricket. So that's definitely something we're looking forward to, and we're really excited to be a part of, playing test cricket against some of the teams that are already established in test cricket.
Chinelle Henry, thank you so much for joining us on Power Play. We could have talked to you for hours, but very wary that you've got a busy schedule ahead. So thank you for being so generous with your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, there was a lot to unpack there from our interview with Chinelle Henry. A few themes emerging. I guess one, the opportunities that the WPL is providing for players. Her as a late injury call-up for Elisa Healy. So she's got a chance that she didn't see coming and is keen to make the most of it, as we heard from Chinelle Henry there. Also, too, I think the opportunity for player development within India, that was sort of always seen as going to be a benefit of this WPL. And we've seen Nikki Prasad, who performed really well at the Under-19 World Cup recently. She stepped straight in for Delhi Capitals with a player of the match performance against Mumbai Indians. So she's really sees the opportunity provided to her as well. That was a really interesting match, sort of, I guess, highlighted by a few controversial runouts there regarding the Zing Bales, and there was plenty sort of happening there. So yeah, the WPL has got it all going on at the moment, and it's only just started for this season. So, but I think they were the main themes that sort of came out from that, was the opportunities that they're providing. And not to mention as well, another one that we've also touched on as well, is for the leading players in the tournament to make some real life-changing sums of money. So that's sort of something that's obviously going to grow from the opportunities being provided to those newer players like Nikki Prasad, to ones sort of coming in with a chance that they didn't see coming in Chinelle Henry, and then there's ones that are the first ones picked for their team. So there's a lot of opportunity there, which we sort of expected to happen when the tournament started, and it just seems to be all happening.
Yeah, definitely. I don't like that you mentioned Nikki Prasad and the Under-19 team, because yet again, it's now the fourth time in a row South Africa reached a World Cup final and they lost. It's the second time they lost to India. I'm talking about the Women's Under-19 World Cup in Malaysia. None of the South African players got picked up in the WPL, but I can tell you from having watched a little bit of the tournament, there are some seriously, seriously talented young women out there. And that's maybe my concern with the WPL, is that we're seeing a lot of the big names, much like we did in the IPL's first few years. So the Laura Wolfards, the Nadine de Klerks, Chloe Tryon, Shabnam Ismail, Marizan Kapp, and from Australia, of course, Phoebe Litchfield, Beth Mooney, Ash Gardner. It's the names we know. Nat Silverbrandt is among them too. Of course, there's not that much opportunity. It's 5 teams. So you've got, 5 squads of 11 or 12 players, probably more, 15. But it's not huge opportunities, and the fringe players in other countries, and countries like South Africa, where there isn't a league, there isn't a T20 league. And I'm just a little bit worried about the gap that we're going to cause between the players that are already established and those who are hoping to become established. And of course, for India, who are able to give opportunities to their younger players, it's going to result in massive and huge improvements for the game. They've got a Women's World Cup later this year in India. I'm sure that's one, especially after their failure at the T20 World Cup, that they will be hoping to try and win. And really, they're giving themselves the absolute best chance, because here you're getting to see a huge range of players on a big stage. You get to see who's got the mettle. You get to see who could slot into the national side. There are a couple of questions around how India play their short format games as well. So, yeah, for them, it's great. You know, South Africa's case with the SA20, having just spoken about it and covered it, worryingly, there doesn't seem to be any plan for a women's SA20 anymore. And that's largely because the WPL has come into that window. But I think it's also because there's a concern that maybe there's not enough women's players in South Africa to make up, let's say, a 5 or a 4-team tournament. You know, we've got the example of the women's CPL, also a very small tournament played over a short period of time. And how much is it actually doing for the development of players in the region? So one of the conversation pieces we're having here in the SA20 and in South Africa is, are we going to end up in a system where we've got an A-League, the IPL, maybe the SA20, maybe the MLC over in the US, and then kind of B leagues that players play in? And I wonder if the same thing will happen in the women's game, where the WPL, maybe the WBBL, 2 big competitions, maybe the women's 100, and the rest of it is just kind of left to kind of almost just function on its own without a lot of a plan. And to me, that's pretty concerning. I'm not sure how you feel about that. I mean, you know a lot about the WBBL. You've just had the 100 teams being sold off, I think 3 or 4 of them to IPL owners. So we're definitely going to see that competition pick up as well.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. And you mentioned the 100. So I think in that tournament, England's now going to get an opportunity to do what you've mentioned India are doing in terms of giving their younger players an opportunity. The 100 already provided that, but now with all the money that's being pumped into these franchises, they can actually do more of that. And the ECB is expecting that money to also filter down into the county system. So again, like developing those players at that level to then come up and play franchise. So I think England, with the money that's pouring in, have got a real opportunity there. WBBL is an interesting one because that's now going to have to be paid in the November time slot, which, you know, it was last year as well, sort of toward the end of November, very early December. And so now January is completely off the table, obviously, as we know, with the WPL. So they're sort of having to contend, you know, with that. We know that Australia has got a strong developmental system there, but I mean, that's sort of something that they're going to have to sort of stay on top of to, you know, keep on top of the game internationally. And one thing that we pointed out as a potential concern when the WPL was announced was that very thing you're talking about, players from other countries getting an opportunity when they're not the big names getting snapped up by these franchise teams. And that all comes down to bilaterals and sort of whether, you know, that's going to be a shop window for a young up and coming player to get picked and then get a chance to play in these franchise leagues. So when we see these franchises just, you know, exploding in terms of investment and interest and that sort of thing, it puts the pressure on the bilaterals again. And that's something that we flagged as a concern a couple of years ago when, you know, we were talking about the WPL coming in. So that's, again, another thing that's going to have to, I think, only become more of an issue as these franchises grow and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of bilaterals, we've just come through one of the most one-sided bilateral series of all time, which was the Women's Ashes, where Australia swept England. Was it 16 points to nothing? And you know that phrase, and England were lucky to get nothing. I mean, what a terrible, terrible tournament for them, having just come from South Africa, where they were pretty comprehensive across all 3 formats. They looked really good, to be honest with you. I thought, oh, well, it's going to be a very competitive Women's Ashes. I mean, what the hell happened?
I know, right? I just groaned as soon as you mentioned Ashes, and I should be happy, I suppose, as an Australian, but I did really want a contest here, and I did expect one. You know, I hold my hands up and say I thought England were going to be a lot more competitive, and I think some of that was based on the South Africa tour. They seem to have, you know, picked up after that disappointing T20 World Cup exit. But also, too, going back to the 2023 Ashes when England at home drew the Series 8-all. They won both white ball series against Australia, and it was just Australia's strength in the test that enabled them to draw and retain the Ashes. So I put a little bit, obviously in hindsight, too much weight on that result, thinking that England were going to push Australia a lot more than they did. They just provided no contest whatsoever. Australia were just so dominant, and any talk about, you know, the gap closing and, you know, Australia, you know, losing ground as you know, other competitors come up and you know, develop their domestic systems and what have you in a bid to catch up, that all just sort of flew out the window for me. Australia were just so dominant in this series and just are clearly still doing things very right.
Yeah, definitely. I want to just talk about, Heather Knight had said before the South Africa series at the end of the World Cup, we're not going to rip up any trees. We're going to stick with what we know. And it's her leadership along with John Lewis that has taken England through the last couple of series. I know there's talk. I know there's pressure around, of course, when a team loses, someone's got to pay the price. What is the likely outcome of this? England have got a home summer. They've got a World Cup coming up. They will really want to be able to show that something has changed. Where will the change in leadership come from, do you think?
Yeah, that is the key question at the moment. The ECB are conducting a review as we speak, expected to come out with some recommendations in the next couple of weeks. The obvious places, I guess, to look are the leadership of the team, so coach and captain. When you look at the coaching side of things, so, I mean, John Lewis took over in late 2022. He's still saying he hasn't finished what he came here to do. He still thinks he's the man for the job going forward. That was the last, we spoke to him after that Ashes whitewash, but they have got someone staring them in the face in Charlotte Edwards. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't take too much of a stretch to say, look, if they do want to change the coaching setup, if they identify that as somewhere that they do want to address this situation, then they've got Charlotte Edwards there. Obviously, she is head coach of Mumbai Indians in action at the WPL at the moment. Back a couple of years ago when John Lewis took over the job, Charlotte Edwards had initially said, oh yeah, I'd be interested, and then 2 weeks later said, no, actually, I'm enjoying what I'm doing with franchise leagues. She had huge success, with Southern Vipers, Southern Brave here in England, was about to go and coach Sydney Sixers in the WBBL as head coach for the first time there, having been an assistant at the Adelaide Strikers for some time. And she also had this gig with Mumbai Indians. We're 2 years on. She actually said recently that she feels better equipped now to take on a national coaching role, given that 2 years of experience that she's got. Where it all fits in terms of her, contracts with other, sort of teams and leagues and what have you. She's going to be the head of Hampshire women's cricket as well in the new domestic setup here. So, she's got a lot of hats that she wears, in a good way, in the sense that she's, as she says, she's got so much more experience now and she's had a huge amount of success as well. With Mumbai Indians, they're going for their second title in 3 years, I should say. They won the inaugural WPL. So she has had a lot of success. But also too, it depends on where she's at with those commitments. Now, with all this money coming into the ECB via the 100 sales, surely they're going to have some money kicking around to, I don't know, maybe pay out those contracts. I'm not 100% sure how that will work, but, surely she's got to be someone that she looks at, that they look at. In terms of the captaincy, Heather Knight, when she was asked about it post Ashes, she didn't say one way or another whether she wanted to continue to lead or that sort of thing. And, whether that decision is hers or not to make, again, will depend on what this review decides. But I think you've got to look, if you are going to go down the route of replacing the captain, who have you got as a standout candidate to replace her? Now, they've got a leadership group that includes Nat Sciver-Brunt, Amy Jones and Sophie Eccleston. And I think of those, you've got to look and say, well, is someone really, pushing to say we're going to do a better job than Heather Knight? Or not themselves saying it, but coming out as someone that everyone's saying, that they can do the job better. So I think if you're going to make a change there, you've got to be very sure that who you're going to go with, has got those credentials.
Yeah, really interesting to talk about succession plans in cricket. And I like what you mentioned about Charlotte Edwards, specifically because I think we are soon to enter the age of former players from women's international sides taking over coaching roles as we start to see more and more women's coaches develop. And one of them that I want to mention is Denisha Devnarine, the South Africa women's under-19 coach. So long-time South Africa player. In fact, the South African women's under-19 team took a support staff comprised mostly of former players. They had the former wicketkeeper Trisha Chetty. She was there as the fielding coach. They had Angelique Tai. She was there as the bowling coach. And they had Marsha Letwala, who was there as the team manager. So 4 former South African internationals with the under-19 side. And I got to say, they pleasantly surprised us by reaching the final. They beat Australia in the semi-final. So that's fantastic as an achievement in any event. Unfortunately, they were blown away, much like their senior team in the final. But it was a really nice and pleasantly surprising success story because there are so many concerns around how South Africa is developing their women's cricket. So the school system looks pretty good. At the moment, we're seeing a lot of the girls coming through the school system, and it seems that not just single-sex schools, but also co-educational schools, boys and girls, are producing female cricketers, which is excellent. You know, South Africa, most of the players get produced through the school system, and a lot of them are also undergoing some really serious and good coaching. One of them is Jemma Botha, who masterminded the chase against Australia. She's in fact coached by the former Proteas batter Ashwell Prince. And I remember sitting in a Cricket South Africa Awards discussion with him some time ago, and he pointed out that at the time she was a rookie player. We were kind of nominating awards for players to watch. And he said, I'm telling you, not just because I coach her, but she's definitely going to be one to look out for and someone that will really develop and come along quite a way in terms of how we're trying to develop female players in South Africa. So but the Under-19 World Cup was kind of low on our radar because we had so much else going on. But I don't know if you've kept an eye on what happened there. Nigeria, an amazing success story. They made it out of the group stage and they've got a team full of homegrown players. Anything else that caught your eye from that tournament?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, the one thing, like when we were talking about whether, you know, bilaterals can be that shop window for players, you know, to come and make a bit of a statement in the franchise leagues, this under-19s World Cup can do just that as well. And, you know, it's in its infancy really as a tournament, but it really has, you know, provided some of that. I remember the last one in 2023, we saw the under-19 England captain Grace Scrivens really sort of, you know, caught people's eyes, and she's, you know, going on to do, you know, bigger and better things here in the domestic scene. And it was actually funny. I was talking to our colleague Andrew Miller recently about just wondering about how long it's going to be before she comes on the senior England radar, given that, you know, if we're looking at making any sort of changes within that England senior setup, you know, looking at, you know, players coming up who can sort of really push for selection there if they're looking to change personnel. And as I mentioned earlier too, Nikki Prasad, she, you know, was at that under-19 World Cup and has just, you know, stepped into Delhi Capital's side and you know, come out with a player of the match performance against Mumbai Indians. So, you know, perhaps, who knows, maybe she was going to get a gig anyway, but her performance in the World Cup might have, you know, led to her, you know, being first cab off the rank in terms of selection, and she went out and really seized her opportunities. So that was really interesting to see. But you did manage to catch up with Jemma shortly, you know, a little while ago now, I should say, during the Under-19 Women's World Cup. And yeah, let's have a little listen to what she had to say.
Well, I'm so excited to speak to young Jemma Botha and to talk about a South African side that has reached another final. It's a 4th final in the last 2 years and just incredible. And Jemma, the first thing I really want to know from you is, what was it like to beat an Australian side that come with such an enormous reputation? I mean, I know they got beaten by Sri Lanka earlier on in the tournament, but as a cricketing nation, Australia, and especially the Australian women, they've got such an aura about them. But there you were as South Africa, really bossing it, just as the senior side did at the T20 World Cup in Dubai. Talk to us about the nerves and that feeling of eventually getting over the line.
So I think to start off, we don't play the team or the player, we play the ball. Doesn't matter if it was, you know, the best player in the world that we were facing or, you know, we were bowling at. I think if you stick to your lines and you play the ball on its merit, you're guaranteed to come out on top, whether it be the best batsman in the world that you're bowling at or the best bowler that you're facing. And yeah.
And then I just want to ask a little bit about the game itself. South Africa were really off to a flyer. They had Australia 30-3 at one stage, and it looks like Ntabiseng Nini is really the bowler to keep an eye on. Jemma, tell us a little bit about her, what she brings to the side, and what it's like playing with her.
She's really made a reputation of, getting either first ball wicket or wicket in the first over. And I think Sticks, she's really consistent. She really knows her plans. She knows what she's doing. She's definitely one to keep an eye on, not just now, but in the final and in the future, definitely. It's always nice to have Sticks in our corner instead of having to face. She's not the easiest bowler to face in the net, but yeah, it's always nice to have Sticks with us.
And then, of course, South Africa reduced Australia to 105 for 8. And although I think we're all still trying to get to grips with what is a good score, especially in unknown conditions, it looked like that was a gettable target. Would you say that was the feeling in the camp, that 106, it's there for the taking?
Whether the score was 180 or 200, or if it was 60, the batsmen in our camp were really capable of doing the job. Everyone pitched in, everyone's able to pitch in, so doesn't matter what's on the board, we'll chase it down.
And then, Jemma, tell us a little bit about conditions. I know there's been a lot of rain around Malaysia, and before the semi-finals, South Africa had in fact not even played a full 20-over game. So we're just trying to get a bit of an understanding on, was it more like seamers wickets, spinners wickets, more for batters, more for bowlers? What was it like playing in Malaysia?
I think Malaysia has really overcast conditions, and usually in South Africa we don't have a lot of that. Borneo we weren't used to those conditions, grassy wickets. We usually used to the flat ones. But now in Kuala Lumpur, the wickets are nice, batting wickets. The bounce is through. Yeah, I enjoy batting there.
And then let's go to the chase. We all know South Africans can be nervy in the chase, and it looked a little bit like that at 35 for 2. But Jemma, with a fantastic 24 ball 37, tell us a little bit about your partnership with Karabo and how you paced that innings.
I had a partnership with Kayla after the 2 wickets fell. I think it was simple. Whether we lost any amount of wickets, you hit the ball as it comes. If it was full in the slot, it needed to go. If it was short, it needed to go. If it was a good length, you played runs with it. So yeah, Kayla, anybody in the team really that I bat with, they help calm the nerves, calm the anxiety. And I think our plans were clear. We knew what we wanted to do. And we wanted to win, so we knew that we had to grind. And it worked out. Came in our favor.
And then it looked in the bag, but there were a flurry of wickets at the end. And I think I counted 8 dot balls that were faced by the batters as they were trying to get to that target. Were there some nerves there, Jemma? And how was it at the end?
Definitely nervous. Rocky ending. But I think the plans were... Okay, let me not say our plans, but we stuck to the plans. We didn't want to do anything too risky. Just wanted to get the runs, under our belt, whether it was going to come in the next 5 balls or whether it was going to come in the next over. As long as we got the runs, that was the plan. And I think we did have to play a little bit of boring cricket to, make it secure the win. But yeah, I'm happy with the way that it panned out. I had a partnership with Kayla after the 2 wickets fell. I think it was simple. Whether we lost any amount of wickets, you hit the ball as it comes. If it was full in the slot, it needed to go. If it was short, it needed to go. If it was a good length, you played runs with it. So yeah, Kayla, anybody in the team really that I bat with, they help calm the nerves, calm the anxiety. And I think our plans were clear. We knew what we wanted to do. And we wanted to win, so we knew that we had to grind. And it worked out. Came in our favor. Definitely nervous. Rocky ending, but I think the plans were... Okay, let me not say our plans, but we stuck to the plans. We didn't want to do anything too risky. Just wanted to get the runs, under our belt, whether it was going to come in the next 5 balls or whether it was going to come in the next over. As long as we got the runs, that was the plan. And I think we did have to play a little bit of boring cricket to, make it secure the win. But yeah, I'm happy with the way that it panned out.
And then lastly, we've mentioned it already, but it's a fourth final for South Africa. In fact, if we count the World Test Championship final, it's a fifth final in the last 2.5 years. So the senior women have done it twice. The men did it at the T20 World Cup. And now the under-19 women have reached a final as well. Tell us a little bit about what that's like, being part of a country where it looks like the sport's really thriving, where there's a lot of big tournament ambition, and where maybe a trophy is not that far away.
I think sport in South Africa right now is thriving, whether it be rugby, cricket, or crickets, or boxing. I think our country invests a lot in their sport, and I think that a lot of kids, growing up, they use sport as almost a way of, forgetting about the struggles that we have back home. And I did it. I know a lot of my friends have done it. So I think we should invest more in our sport in our country. And yeah, to be South African and to be playing for your country is always a special thing, especially to be playing in a World Cup final is, a different type of feeling. And I think the next group, the next World Cup, they can definitely take it as far as we have. And I hope that they win it as well. Because there will be a lot of returning players from this group, which brings a lot of, experience and things like that. So it's exciting to see. I can't wait.
Oh, that was great, Firdose. And it does sound like, South Africa women's cricket is in good hands, given the performance of this under-19s team. What are your sort of thoughts on that in terms of, like you said, succession planning? And we're looking at, the England team, whether they bring in some fresh players. What are your thoughts on South Africa's opportunities to do that out of their success at the under-19s?
Yeah, I hope that they will get some of these young girls involved in some of the provincial teams. Of course, a lot of them are still at school, and it's difficult to kind of juggle studies. We've just seen with Kwena Mapaka, the young 18-year-old left-arm tearaway playing for the men's team. He had to write his final exams somewhere during making his international debut. So these things can get a little bit tricky. But I think South Africa have really got to start thinking about perhaps life beyond Marizanne Cup. I think she's probably looking at this World Cup, maybe next year's T20 World Cup. And of course, she is the game's premier all-rounder, just about. So some Australians might have a thing or two to say about that. But Annerie Dirksen is somebody who she's just recently won the ICC award for the Young Breakout Player of the Year from the women's perspective. And I think she's somebody that they could look at in terms of taking over the Marizanne Cup type role. They'll probably have to start thinking about how to shore up the middle order. Chloe Tryon, Sune Lees, all in their 30s and maybe not performing to expectation in the last couple of series. So these are things South Africa will want to look at, and the under-19 side is probably a better measure of the potential that's out there than some of the domestic circuit, because the domestic competition, it's only professionalized in its second year now, and professionalized is really using terminology that I think we're trying to be professionalized, because these players are not earning huge salaries. In fact, most of them are earning what the second tier men's players are earning. So they'll need something else on the side. And it's kind of one of maybe 2 or 3 jobs that some of them have. Others are at school, others are studying. It's that kind of setup, and it's something South Africa will need to think about. At the moment, I think a big focus on the men's game, of course, with a home World Cup in 2027, and way before we even get there, a World Test Championship final at Lord's. So there's really a lot focused on getting South Africa a global title, because, as we mentioned, 4 finals and 4 defeats. So it's been a pretty rough time. But it's nice to see that there's some thought being given to it. And it's nice to see that the Under-19 World Cup was actually so well received and so well watched. I was at the capping ceremony for the players. It was during the Pakistan Test match, and they had a huge lunch ceremony for them. They capped them during the lunch break of the day's play, and it was in the president's suite. So all the who's who were there, and really nice to see them made to feel very special and important. And then they went on and reached the final. So maybe that's the secret. You've got to get a capping ceremony in the presidential suite before a major tournament. But I'm heartened, and I do think there's some good things coming out of them. Likewise, I mentioned Nigeria, but I'll give them another little mention, because it's not really a country that you associate with cricket. Nigeria was a British colony, and there are accounts of cricket being played there from the late 1800s, early 1900s. But by and large, football is the main sport in Nigeria. Their women's football team are 6 or 7-time African champions, and that's really the sport that people want to play. But they're building this base of mainly local players, which I think is so impressive and important. A lot of the time we see that countries who are newer to cricket, their base is built by expats, and that's not the case in Nigeria. They're building it from young schoolgirls who are interested in the game, who are learning, extremely athletic individuals from what we saw at the Under-19 World Cup, great bowlers, excellent in the field. So they're a side that are there to watch, and I'm in touch with them. I receive some regular updates from their schools tournaments, and it looks like they've got a huge range of players who want to play cricket in Nigeria. So hopefully we're seeing a slight growth of the game there. Valks, before we sign off, something very important coming up in April, which is the Women's World Cup qualifiers. We've got Pakistan, Bangladesh, West Indies, Scotland, Thailand, and Ireland playing in that. They're vying for 2 spots, and we'll obviously cover it closer to the time. I know that Bangladesh in particular are very disappointed. They missed out by just the 1 point, and they really, really wanted to qualify automatically for that tournament. First of all, I mean, are you looking forward to that? I know we've got a whole WPL to go before that, but also, 2 places, 6 teams, seems pretty rough.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? And I think, and there are some good teams in there as well. You mentioned Bangladesh only just missing out, so surely they've got to be one of the ones that you'd think would be certainly a contender. And also to West Indies, we spoke to Chinelle Henry about this, and just given their success, their almost unexpected success at the T20 World Cup, I know completely different format, but we talked to her a little bit about what that success at the T20 level could mean for the 50 over side. And you'd think surely they're starting to, really develop some stuff that's working for them. So if they can really hone in on that and keep that going, I'd give them a good chance as well. But as you say, I mean, there's going to be some pretty decent sides there that miss out there with only 2 spots up for grabs. But
yeah, I think I'd probably call the same too, actually, West Indies and Bangladesh. But I have to say it's being held in Pakistan, and I just want to sort of caveat this point with that. If Pakistan qualify, we're going to have a very interesting situation because they won't play any World Cup matches in India. They're likely to play them in either Dubai or Sri Lanka, and the Women's World Cup involves everybody playing everybody. So we're going to see a lot of extra travel, a lot of change of conditions, and it will really make the tournament almost more complicated, but it will also add a different dimension to it. I know we've left Scotland and Ireland and Thailand out of our mix there, and many apologies to them. I guess Scotland were a surprise entry at the T20 World Cup. So we'll definitely keep an eye on those qualifiers as they progress. I think for West Indies not to get there, that would probably cause some sort of other internal review to happen, just given, that they expect so much from themselves. Anything else you're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks, folks, before we say goodbye?
Oh, as ever with cricket, it just keeps rolling on and on, doesn't it? So we're going to have plenty to talk about in our next episodes. There's qualifiers, the WPL is just going to keep rolling on and on in the meantime. And then we're going to be, before we know it, into the England and Wales season. So there'll be plenty to look ahead to there. So we look forward to bringing you all of that and more, not least what's going on with England. I expect to have some news on that shortly too. So with all that on the boil, we will keep an eye on it. And next time we speak to you, we'll bring you more news. In the meantime, thanks for joining us on ESPN Cricinfo Power Play.